In this video, I'm going to go over the Vael fight from Raid Y on May 21st. The first thing we're going to look at is just a video of the fight. I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes I made there. Then we will look at some of the logs and one of the tools where you can see what the threat looked like. And finally, we'll look at the trash pull right after Vael. So the first thing I want to talk about in the fight is, as the tank, I'm trying to start the fight in Berserker stance so that I can pop my Diamond Flask, use Blood Rage, use Death Wish, use Recklessness, switch to defensive stance, pop a Mighty Rage Potion, and be ready to Bloodthirst and Heroic Strike in the first global once Vael becomes attackable. Unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention, didn't switch my gear fast enough. So if you can see here, it may be a little bit hard to read, but there's 30 seconds until the fight starts right now, and I've still got my life-giving gem equipped. I haven't equipped my Vael set yet, and I realized that like right at the 30-second mark, and I changed my equipment, you'll see here, but the problem is I've got a 30-second cooldown on my Diamond Flask. What that means is I kind of panic a little bit on the pull because I can't pop my Diamond Flask, so I don't get my Death Wish off, I don't get Recklessness off, I barely swapped to defensive stance in time, and I certainly didn't Mighty Rage Pot either. So I really kind of bungled the start of this fight here. Despite that, it still went pretty good. Let me speed it up a little bit so we can go at like normal speed. I don't think there's really anything notable to talk about here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So you'll see Vael spin around a little bit. He's either targeting people for BA or people are pulling aggro. It looks like Aegis Zero may have taken a hit here. That was almost certainly a result of me screwing up the pull. I got lucky with a crit Bloodthirst, but this could have gone much worse. I just happened to get really lucky. So anyhow, after that, once I actually get threat, it's a pretty smooth fight. I never dip that low in terms of damage. The DPS is good enough to finish on time. I don't think there's really anything super interesting to talk about. We'll go into some of the details about damage numbers and all of that here in a second. But anyhow, Vael goes down. I think I also benefited a lot from getting lucky on a good streak of heroic strikes that ended up critting. I don't know if we already passed that or not. But yeah, it was a pretty good fight. So I'm going to pause the video there, and I want to now switch over and look at the log so we can talk about damage numbers. So as I mentioned before, you really want to beat the fight in 45 seconds, and we did in 43.4, which is great. The reason you want to beat it in 45 seconds is because there's a debuff that goes out called Burning Adrenaline, and it goes out every 15 seconds, and every third one of those is going to go on whoever has aggro at that time, and so that's going to be the tank. And so if you can avoid getting to the third one, then you don't have to worry about the tank getting Burning Adrenaline, and if you don't have to worry about that, then the tank doesn't have to worry about dying or trying to hearth out. So it was great that we were able to accomplish that. And in order to get there, you need to do around 22,000 DPS, something like that. I don't know what the exact number is, but you need to do 1,000,000 damage in 45 seconds, essentially. So we did that. We had a little bit of a margin too. It was great. So that's the damage numbers. One of the things to talk about and kind of how you can optimize damage on this fight is looking at the cooldown usage. So a big one is Death Wish, and ideally you want to use Death Wish about 15 seconds into the fight if you're targeting a 45-second fight. So Dagwood actually had pretty much perfect timing on that. You can see that I popped Death Wish like a little bit into the fight. I should have pre-popped it, but I screwed up, so I didn't. But in terms of a DPS warrior, Dagwood like nailed the timing. Here, let me switch to timeline real quick. So you'll see he popped it about 15 seconds into the fight, which means if it's a 45-second fight, he's going to have it up the whole time, and he did. And you'll note on the table that he had like the highest uptime other than me. So he actually could have popped it a little bit earlier, but I think this was pretty much perfect. So everyone else was pretty consistently popping it. Like, I don't know, when is that on the timeline? Looks like about 7 or 8 seconds after Dagwood did at 15. I think what happened was me or someone else called out, hey, use your cooldown. So we definitely should have called that out a little bit earlier. And maybe Dagwood, if you didn't get lucky doing that, that's something that he could do, call that out, because he seems to have the timing down. Anyhow, Deathwish timing was okay, not perfect, but still pretty good. Everyone used it. We all had pretty good uptime. The next thing to look at is Recklessness, which is another big cooldown. And when you've got, 8 or 9 DPS warriors in the raid, they're the ones who are going to make or break the 45-second mark. And the way they're going to make it is by using their cooldowns at the right time. And so if Deathwish goes out at 15 seconds, you probably want to have this. Now, this one's more debatable. You probably want to have Recklessness go out about 15 seconds after that. So at the 30-second mark. That way it's going to be up for the last 15 seconds of the fight. There is argument for just popping it as soon as you hit execute phase. So as soon as Vael gets to 20%. But, I don't think there's a strong argument either way. So if you look and see here, if we go to the timeline for this, I think we really nailed this one with everyone popping it 27 or 28 seconds. In between 27 and 30 seconds, everyone popped Recklessness, which is a, great timing on that, because that means everyone had it up for the entire execute phase. So anyhow, I think that's pretty much all there is to talk about from these logs. The one other thing I want to discuss is the threat chart here. And so this is a great tool where you can put your logs in and it will show you the threat over time. So time is on the x-axis, y is threat. And you can see here is Barnes' threat throughout the fight. No one ever really gets super close. You will notice that Dagwood definitely started holding off here. I don't know if he executed again after that last one. Let's see. Diamond Flask, melee, Bloodthirst. Yeah, so it looks like Dagwood stopped executing around 35 seconds into the fight, probably because he got a little bit nervous when this execute, how close it got him. That is mostly a factor of me not popping Rec, screwing up the pool. I don't even think I had Diamond Flask up. So he shouldn't have to do that in the future, but definitely a smart play by him. Another thing you can do is use Lip. And if you're a warrior, you probably want to save it and try and Lip for the last 6 seconds. That way you can just go as hard as you want. It's a little bit difficult to time that, but it's possible. If you're a rogue, we should look at what Leglock did here, because I think it's a good example. Let me zoom in on his threat. So the strategy for rogues is you can go super hard right at the start, just start backstabbing immediately, then pop a lip. You can have it up for the 6 seconds, and these green dots indicate that there's a lip up. And when you've got, right as your lip is about to run out, you vanish and drop all of your threat. So in this case, it looks like Leglock was pretty close. I don't think he would have pulled threat, but he kind of executed that plan here, and you can see right around here, he's got his lip on, the limited invulnerability. Then right as it's about to wear out, he vanishes and drops threat. So you can imagine that this yellow line was could have been way above the brown line here, and he still wouldn't have pulled threat because he had a lip up and then he vanished right after. So that's a really good example of how Rogue should be doing it. And you'll also notice in the logs, I think Leglock did pretty good on damage. Yeah, he was top DPS by like 400. So that was a great example of how to do that fight as a rogue. Now we can go back to the video. Like I said, this isn't too interesting. Vael dies. We lost Luthias and Ariana to the burning adrenaline. That's pretty much unpreventable. One thing I think we might want to explore doing is saving our soul stones and putting it on the folks who get BA during the fight. That one could be interesting because it'll save us a little bit of time. And the reason we want to save time is we've got this Essence of the Red buff. And if we can quickly get to the next trash pack, we can use that Essence of the Red buff, which gives us unlimited resources to kill that trash pack really quickly. And so, like, I think the ideal way for this to go down, in my opinion, is we kill Vael, then we immediately run to the trash pack. We mark it up quickly, pull it, kill it. We only do the one on the left, and then we're able to get into the suppression room with some time left on our Essence of the Red. So in this case, we had a little over 2 minutes when we got to the trash pack. And I think when we actually end up pulling it, we've got about 15 seconds left on the buff. The pull happens at 1904. So without even really trying to do this, we still kind of achieved it. And so I think if we're optimizing for it by doing things like putting a soulstone on whoever gets BA, we'll be able to have it up the entire time. And so the benefit of that is mostly it makes this pull a little bit safer, and it allows us to kind of get into the suppression room without any deaths that we don't, that would happen by accident on this pull, which is kind of tricky otherwise, and saves us a lot of time. So this week we had kind of a freak thing happen. I'm still not exactly sure what caused it, but we ended up, when we pulled this pack, right about at the point we're at in the video right now, someone called out, "Hey, we got the other pack too." At first we thought it might have been a weird pathing thing, but I believe someone probably just body pulled. I'm still not certain exactly what happened, but it's not going to deter me from doing this pull again next week. One thing to note here is when that person called out, like, "Hey, we got the other pack," I should have immediately been like, "Everyone zone out," but someone had to actually ask, like, "Hey, can we zone out?" And at that point I was like, "Yes, zone out." So I remember it was 1915, which is the timestamp we're at now, where that call went out. And then let's see how long it takes for us to actually start zoning out. All right, and then about 15 seconds later, we all start running away. So we ended up losing about 9 people from that, which is unfortunate. I don't know how much overlap there was with people who died to burning adrenaline or people who died on Razor Gore, but still, that wasn't great. We could have started zoning out faster and probably saved a few people. Anyhow, we ended up, pulling again about 4.5 minutes later, and then making it into the suppression room shortly after that. So that costs, 4.5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but a few of those really add up. And when the entire run, we could do it at our pace in an hour and a half, probably, very comfortably. 3 or 4 5-minute mistakes adds a significant chunk of time to that clear time. So this wasn't great. I don't think it's something that's a problem that needs to be addressed specifically. It's just a kind of an accident that happened. Anyhow, that is it for Vael and the trash pull after. The next video will be going over the suppression room and can't think of his name, Broodlord? Lashlayer, yes.